6:30. Please rise to pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I do have one public announcement. We had a young man here in Templeton, Elijah Hill, who made his Eagle Scout yesterday, which is hats off to him and his family, and a job well done to get to that level of rank of an Eagle Scout. So to him and his family, great job. Carter?
One housekeeping matter, Mr. Chairman. You contacted me over the weekend, perhaps it was Friday, the start of the weekend, and asked that we reschedule the community meeting and workshop from 3/28 to 3/27.
Yes.
The reason being that the school district will hold the final hearing on their budget the 28th of the month. So we did, with your assistance, we're able to contact Gardner News, get revised dates out. So that public meeting will be on the 27th here in this room.
Was that updated on the website?
It was. It's been updated on the website, the various bulletin boards,
Okay,
out to cable, the different department heads and the like.
great.
So the 27th.
We have for you tonight, Mr. Chairman, the various, what I call soft departments, that is to say, not public safety, not public works. Do you want to follow what's on page 4? How do you want to do this?
That's fine.
Okay. So then on page 4, you'll see the breakdown, and it starts with the executive officers and IT. On page 33, and if we could, Mr. Chairman, I've asked all the departments to try to move through their budgets fairly quickly, and
Thank you.
perhaps if the two boards could wait till the department heads have kind of burned through it to ask them their questions, because you have quite a few departments here in front of you this evening. So we start on page 33. This is the basic staffing plan of this year. The only difference to it is the 52.2 weeks, as we move all departments to being financed for 53 weeks to account for that anomaly that happens every 7 years. And it is I would continue on the couple days a week. You pay me for 16, I give you about 34 hours. And we would continue with the municipal management fellow. On page 34, this is the employee support. It is the dues for the Massachusetts Municipal Management Association, for myself, for the municipal management fellow, for the members of the Board of Selectmen. It is the car allowance that you give me. I do not get any mileage. I only get the car allowance, and then the reimbursables for meetings and the like. There remains again this year, although we've not fully fleshed out exactly what to do, is the employee and volunteer recognition and promotions. We had the luncheon for the employees last summer. I actually paid for that, and we want to do something on the volunteer side of the house as well. On page 35, this is the monies for town council, for employee physicals, and for the town forester. This year, we'll spend about $5,000, and after paying this out, we'll actually net about $13,000. He's developed a plan for some other lands. I don't think that has come in yet. Is Laurie here? Lori's not here just yet. I'll check with you.
In the back.
Do you know if the town forester submitted the new plan for next year to Mallory yet? Okay. But that's a money, making venture there.
Okay.
Page 36 is our office supplies. Page 37, I want to speak to wherever there are contractual raises in place already, whether it is the police chief's raise, fire chief's raise, the union raises for highway or others, town clerk's raise because it has to be voted on the town meeting floor because she is elected. And unlike appointed officials, her raise has to be voted by, her pay has to be voted by the town meeting. So this reserve is for collective bargaining agreements and all non-union personnel. And that's that $40,000 there. Page 38 is our membership in the municipal association, some advertising, and some postage in the publishing of the annual report. That is all I have on the executive officers. Happy to answer any questions, and then we can move along to the IT budget if you like, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I read recently that you're switching legal counsel. When does the new legal counsel start?
Started already, Mr.
You
Chairman?
did, it started already.
And when did the former legal counsel end?
Ended already, except for continuing cases,
One
which
case
this
is,
board.
there's one case that's open now, still, that he's
Yes.
still representing us.
Okay.
Just so you, if you weren't aware of it, the former town council's firm has dissolved. Number of their councils left them. They've reformed completely, so that firm is actually no longer completely intact. So if there's no other questions, then, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to page 64, IT and communications.
Sure.
So I'm gonna turn you to page 66. My apologies, 64 and 65 with nothing on them. We shouldn't have used, frankly, the paper to print them. 66, basically, with but one exception, I'm gonna ask Doug to speak to. This is primarily what we have this year. We have our internet service at our 6 buildings. We have a very low-priced, count your blessings, computer service through Montalbano. I'm going to ask Doug to speak to the Office 365 in a moment. The town website annual fee, that is $2,500. And I want to make you aware of something on that. I'll hand this out. I have included $800 to convert the current website to a new platform that is friendlier to mobile devices. The total cost of that, and Jeff, I'll give you the extras for your members that aren't here, is $2,400. However, we can spread it out over 3 years. The thing that I need you to be aware of is that the current platform is being discontinued in February of 2019. At that point, it will no longer be supported. So, yes, we're a squish ahead of the curve, but if we do nothing, the platform is going to be discontinued.
Okay.
Whether they leave it up and let us continue to use it for a while, but they won't support it. There will be no technical support. There will be no, reboot. There will be nothing done at their end.
I got you.
One of the things that we want to do when we transition to that new platform will be a reset of how we use it, who uses it, hopefully a much more active, robust use of that as a communications tool. The balance are the various printers, copiers, and some ongoing replacement. We kind of joke to ourselves, we can get 5 years out of these machines because that's the only way we can make the numbers work. And Doug, I'm gonna ask you, if you don't mind, please, to speak to the Microsoft 365 issue.
Okay. So in this fiscal year, we did the server upgrade so that we now actually have a true secure network here in the building. And the next logical step is to go to Office 365, which gets us the current versions of the Microsoft Office products. Plus, it'll give us email that, you know, meets compliances, which internet email does not. And it's a, you know, a good-sized project to do. We would roll it out town-wide so that we can pick up the advantages of common calendaring, you know, Skype, instant messaging, online meetings, those types of things that you can do with the product. We currently use Microsoft Office 2007, which has not been in support since 2013, so it's been out of support for a long time. So that's where, you know, that's where we're moving to. That's the next logical step in, you know, migrating to a modern and secure platform. With all the cyber stuff that goes on these days, security is a big issue. So we've got to make sure our data is protected, and this is a good way to do that.
Great. Thanks, Doug. And is this an annual cost?
Right, so Office 365, there's an install and deployment, which is a one-time cost, but then the ongoing cost is an annual cost, because Office 365 is web-based. So the whole, you know, cloud computing model that everybody hears about today is you don't have the infrastructure. You don't have to have any servers or anything like that. It all lives out in the cloud on Microsoft servers. And for that, you're not paying for infrastructure costs, but you're paying a monthly fee or an annual fee to use those services.
Gotcha.
So Office 365 is really a service that we're annualized.
I got you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just, can I make just a couple other comments here?
Please.
Yep. So the Nordic backup we have in here at $250, that's gonna have to increase somewhat. I don't have a price yet on that, but that will have to go up a little bit, because now that we're putting everybody's data on the server, we're consuming more backup space. And again, Nordic is another cloud-based service, so again, you're paying for the amount of storage that you use. It's an annual cost of $250, what we have now, you know, which is extremely reasonable for what we get out of it. That's all I got.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Just had a question for you, Doug. Relating to the Microsoft Office 365, are those two, the email productivity package and the email-only package, are those going to be separate purchases at separate times? And I'm just wondering, for the sake of getting it to capital planning, because it was, you know,
Okay.
combined,
Right.
it's over the.
Right, so again, you know, Office 365, it's an annualized fee. It's not really a, you know, a capital one-time expense. And the difference is licensing. So you can buy an email-only license, which all that gets you is Exchange, which lets you participate in the common calendars, as well as having your own inbox, your own calendar. For those types of users that don't have an office in a town building, but need to have, you know, town email. Where the productivity package is the one that includes then the license where you can have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, those other Microsoft applications. But they are an operating expense because it's an annual fee that you're paying.
Thank you.
Liz, you have a question?
Yeah, because Office 365 is web-based, can you very briefly explain why we have an install and deployment for $6,000? Briefly.
So, briefly, Office 365 has to integrate with your Active Directory in order to support network security. And that's a process. You have to migrate all your existing email into Exchange. And again, that's a process that takes expertise to do that. Plus, you got it to, at every desktop, you have to uninstall the Office 2007, get rid of all of that residual stuff. And if you have the productivity pack, you actually install the applications on the local PC versus the application being in the web. If you're an email-only user, then your only access is through the web, through a web browser. But the Office 365 productivity package, you actually install so you have the applications locally on your machine. So again, you got to get rid of all the old stuff, you got to get the machine up to date, all of that type of stuff. So there is an implementation process you have to go through.
Okay, and just one other quick
Okay.
question on it, sorry. You don't expect this to be an annual reinstallation every year, right?
No, because once you have it installed, then just like Windows, it does updates automatically.
Okay.
But you do have to go through that initial setup process.
All right.
Yes.
My question is about archiving and records retention. Is Office 365 going to be used for records retention and archiving, or is it going to be the website, the new website platform?
The server will,
So it depends on what kind of records you're talking about. I mean, if it's documents and things that the employees create, those would be stored on the server and be part of our record and retention here. Email would live in the Microsoft Exchange cloud, and there are retention policies that you can deploy for email. There's also a number of other secure options that Exchange offers, for, how long does it keep, deleted items? Can people delete items? Does it go to an archive after so long? Those types of things. So email would certainly live within Office 365. Whether we choose to implement OneDrive versus retaining all of our internal documents on the server, that's yet to be determined. I mean, certainly this year we would not deploy OneDrive. So,
So, for a committee, where would we put our minutes?
Continue to use My Town Gov.
like town
yeah,
government.
so.
Okay.
You'll continue to use My Town Gov
Okay,
for your postings of agendas and meeting minutes. When we rebuild the website, we do have to integrate all the minutes somehow that preceded My Town Gov, so that they can be in one location somehow. I haven't really figured how we're gonna do that just yet, because they're two different designs.
right.
But as long as My Town Gov is supported and is available to us, town clerk likes it, most committees seem to find it relatively easy to use. The intent is to continue on that platform.
Anything else?
I just have one,
Yes, good.
to get all departments and everybody on the same thing, so they're not piecemeal anymore, is there a time frame estimate for this to be online when it passes? When we get into the new fiscal year, is there a guess? I mean, I know you can't tell me it'd be 2 weeks, a month, whatever, but is there an estimate of when this will be up town-wide running? 'Cause I think it's a really good thing, it'll stop the piecemeal stuff for different departments.
So I can speak a little to that. I can't give you a definitive answer to your question, but typically this kind of project takes roughly 3 to 4 months to organize, define, and deploy. Prior to that, we'll have to have meetings with Rudder, who is most likely who we will use to do the implementation. We'll have to meet with them, kind of define the scope. They'll have to develop a formal scope of work contract to be signed. So that's probably, I'm guessing, we're probably talking a couple months after, the fiscal year, depending on, what other balls are in the air and have to be juggled. So best guess, I'm thinking we're probably 5 to 6 months into
I think
The
you're in the
next
third
fiscal
quarter
year.
because our priority really has to be on the rebuild of the website, because that
Okay.
software is not gonna be supported come
Okay.
January, February.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably in the third quarter.
Calendar year 19 probably.
Yes.
Really, I mean, for a
Yes.
realistic
Yeah,
January.
because I think our priority has to be on the website,
Right.
because once that software goes down,
Do the base and then add them.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
that would be my guess.
Mhm.
You guys have anything else? I see nothing.
If there's nothing else, Mr. Chairman, I would ask Laurie Weta to come up for Development Services. It starts on page 115.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Uh, 113, if you'll remember, Laurie is one of the two test departments that we put into your book
Right.
with respect to a new budget. I'm not going to say format, but an informative piece
I
that's
loved it.
a little
It was
bit
done wonderfully well.
easier for folks to look at and kind of get a grasp of what the unit is all about, in keeping with our philosophy that the budget is more than just numbers. So again, as you look at this, and as you look back at the police department, if you have some thoughts, concerns, questions, if you could let us know, because we're trying to take that feedback in and then finalize this project, which would be fully deployed with the next budget year, which will happen sooner than any of us would like to think.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I actually, I like the format, but the person writing it still has to write it all up, and I think that the police chief, I think that Laura, you did a great job. And I like the fact that you have to do a mission statement and a department description and numbers, goals, accomplishments, so that we can see in a finite order, you know, where they've been, where they're going, what they need, how, you know, I like to see how we can help you. And I know it's not, you know, part of it, it wasn't like fully finished. I know that there are other pieces to this, but I really do like it. So, and I thought that you did a great job, and thank you very much.
Great.
I didn't know if anybody else had any other thoughts. I loved it.
You else anything to add? No?
Other than that, my budget is pretty close to what it was last year.
Yeah,
I
cool.
don't know if you had time to look it over.
Page 118?
118.
It's only gone up about 1%, correct?
Yeah. Some of the changes that had happened through a budget last year helped keep that down.
Yeah, you really,
Okay.
like, you kept it pretty much right where it was, honestly. I can't-
We're gonna move on to employee support. If anybody's have any questions, when she's done, we can go back.
I think the signs, let me just see,
For
the right to farm community, so these are, I'm sorry, I wrote down stuff and my book had fallen out of my bag. So if you wanted to explain those.
Sure. What's happening is our agricultural commission would like to have signs made for, to put throughout the town.
Yep,
And just to let people know that it's a right to farm.
yeah, I like that
You
idea.
know, that we welcome it,
Okay,
and
yeah, I like that idea. A lot of people do ask
we do.
about that.
With the signs, you'll notice there's a note, and we're hoping to get them done sooner than later.
What page you on?
125.
Okay, 123.
The asterisk down
Yep.
at the bottom of the
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish we could do that. A lot of people ask me about that. What does a right to farm community mean? What is, are we a right to farm community? Do you have to have a certain amount of land? Do you, I get a lot of those questions. No, you can have like a little small piece and you can have any, so, yeah, I think it's a great idea. But no, your budget really didn't change. So,
It's, any question about purchases and services, or do you wanna go back? Yes.
Yeah, I had a question on page 118.
Yep.
Under alternate inspectors,
Mm-hmm.
the request was 0, and the administrator put in $1,100, and I'm just curious, what is an alternate inspector, and what is it used for?
So let's say the building inspector goes on vacation for 2 weeks. Our current choice is to tell people to wait for 2 weeks. I don't think that's a very customer-centric approach to things. And so in that instance, we would have an alternate building inspector, an alternate gas, plumbing, an alternate electrical inspector, who during those periods of time would be called to do the inspection. So it's a cost, but I think it's a much more customer-friendly approach to managing the community.
I had one other question, and I know we had voted at the special town meeting in November to take $25,000 out of free cash and put it into inspectional services. And we were gonna do that again
Yes.
at, where does that $25,000 show up? In the budget, or,
When you get your budget to actuals, if you compared the start of the year, well, let's say November 1, and then you look at it, as of today, you would see the budget is an additional $25,000 from the fall town meeting.
okay.
And yes, we do have a warrant article for fiscal 19 with respect to the building inspections. When we get to review the warrant, I'll bring that to your attention. Again, being paid with free cash.
Right.
The building inspection fee that will receive a revenue of approximately, I think it's $150,000 this year.
Okay, so you're gonna take in $150,000. Where does that money end up?
Free cash. Basically, it's a revenue of the community.
Okay. So that would have to be certified by the DOR in order
Yes,
to
at the end of the
access it.
fiscal year, that'll get certified.
Julie, you have anything else?
No, not right now.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Moving on. Is that it, Laurie?
That's it. That's all I've got.
thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Laura, so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
With that, Mr. Chairman, the town clerk would be up next. And you can find the town clerk's budget starting at page 71.
Page 71, let's see, the increases, so we have 2 additional elections this year, we have the primary and the state election. On page 72, that stays about the same. 73, the copier was moved to the IT contract. And we had to add cost of coding the machines for the state primary and state election. Also additional costs for the poll workers too. And this year is the last year for the codification.
Somebody have any questions?
I'd
Yes.
just like to mention, people need to get their dogs registered by March 31st.
Please register your dogs, please.
I was thankful for the big orange flyer that came in the thing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it. So on, I'm sorry,
go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, can I please ask Carol a question? So on the codification, this is the last year, so can you please give us an update on how that's going and,
They have submitted a, very first booklet to us that we need to kind of have to be going through and, and then we will be sending the final.
okay, so, and then, so what really the last piece is kind of going back and forth
Exactly.
with them, and then, what we paid them, that included that website,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
Where you can have like minutes and that, all that searchable stuff, and so I just want people to keep that in mind.
So I just want to make sure we're all aware of the timeline here. So we've got this pretty thick rewrite of everything with
I was just
explanations,
curious.
statutes and such.
That
Mhm.
takes
We're hoping
Yeah.
to, you know, as soon as we kind of grind through this, we're hoping to work on that. And our hope is to have it ready for the fall town meeting.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Once the fall
Thank you,
town
Carol.
meeting does it, it's a complete and total rewrite, so the entire book will go to the AG's office. So plan a goodly amount of time for review. Once the AG's office comes back, then we would post it in accordance with statute, and the website would go live
Oh.
at that point.
Right.
Yeah,
That's gonna be great.
just for the, with the codification on it, and,
So we're truly probably about a year out
Yep.
from seeing that website go live
Wow.
just yet.
that's great work, Carol. Thank you so much. Thanks for the update.
Yes.
For the codification project, is that going to have a public hearing? Like, are people gonna have input into it and access to what it looks like before they vote on it at the town meeting in the fall?
As far as the website itself, or the web link,
I'm talking about the book.
The
or you
book.
talk about the book?
The book.
I think it's probably substantial enough that that's not a bad idea. We're
Yeah.
having a public meeting next week before you take final action on this warrant. I think that once we have something we think you're taking to town meeting, whether we do it with,
Mhm.
talk of the town, we do it in here, we get it on the web, yeah, I think that's something we're
Yeah.
fine with.
Absolutely. So what's that? Yep. Great, thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, the next department was the assessor, and that starts on page 51.
Sure, she's got a lot of
Luann.
changes.
And I do just want to ask Luann to touch upon, there's one project that's over in the capital, it's outside the operating budget. Source of funding still being fully worked out. But after she's done with the operating budget, I would ask her to touch upon the 20K
Yep.
for the new software that's in the capital budget.
Okay, so on page 51 for my personnel, you'll notice my budget increased $1,400 this year. 400 of it is due to the fact that we went to a 53-week pay period instead of the 52.5. And the other 1,000 is, if all goes good by the end of this June, I'll be certified, so next year I get a stipend because I do have certification through the Massachusetts Assessment Association. So that would be that increase on that page.
That's great.
Next page for employee support, nothing changed, it's the same as last year. And, purchases of service, it went up, last year it was about $11,000, this year it's gone up to $11,250. The main increase was legal at the Guardian News increase, I do the, classification hearing ad in the paper, so I had to increase it some for that.
Mhm.
And also contractual obligations with vision, they increased a little bit, which, if you look at the attachments, it shows my vision bill. that does save us a lot of money.
Good.
With all the commitments there. I have no intergovernmental on 56, and on 57, which is my expense other budget, is, let's see, 18, it was $600 I had this year, and I dropped that down to $500. We dropped a little bit in postage. Worcester Registry of Deeds, they send me plans, so I pay that, so I left that, it went up, I think, $1 this year. The other thing you see in there is the $20,000, which is a mandated upgrade that I have to do with my Vision software. Vision software is all our real estate in town, that's how all our taxes and everything are generated out of. So as of August 1st this year, the old system is pretty much obsolete, so the upgrade is gonna cost us $20,000. Originally, I had put it in our budget in the reval account, but Carter and I have talked, and we're putting it into capital planning, and I think right now it's being addressed through the municipal light plan as maybe being a funding source for it instead of the reval.
Okay, great.
Other than that, pretty basic. Any questions?
Go ahead.
This is more of a general question, and I apologize if this has been already addressed in an earlier meeting. But there, throughout the book, I see lump sum disallowed. Or places where, hey, we've increased here, we've decreased there. It's like, you know, Luann had one thing where she said, you know, that she had dropped it by $250, and then the lump sum disallowed was $100. So did that take off $250 or $350? So I'm trying to understand the logic behind the lump sum first.
Lump sum disallow is a Carter OCD analness about doing the budget. I go through the budget with the department heads, and there are times where I simply don't feel we can support a given item. That's just a zero. Or perhaps there's an item that I think we can do over 2 or 3 years, so instead of approving the 9,000 that they've asked for, I approve 3,000, hoping we can do. But at the end of the day, there generally is not enough money to go around these budgets, and so I go back through them and I simply nick a little bit here and there to bring the total budget. If you added them all up, it's probably something on the order of $35,000, give or take, across the budget.
Page 55,
So when you
Luann.
hear my amounts, I don't take into account Carter's lump sum, I just take into account my total. So like that one you were talking about, I had $1,000 that year, my budget dropped down to $750 total. That's, I mean, Carter's recommendation, but it also was cut, and I dropped it down to that amount, so it went down 200.
So the 750 is the correct
Is the
amount.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
it's decreased from what I had last year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything else?
Just one
Yes.
quick question. For your conference and education and workshops, do your commissioners go to those with you?
Not really, no.
Would it be beneficial for them to?
No, the only thing they really have to go to is they have to be certified in Course 101 when they get elected to the board. So, I mean, I offer it out to them to go to the conferences, but they opt out. Usually I'll go, and once in a while Sue will come with me, but they don't really go.
And the 101 is now web-based as well, I believe, where
Yes.
you're elected.
Yeah, you can either go
Assessors.
online to take the test, or you can send them to UMass, but to save the town money, I recommend that they do it online and
Which makes sense.
take the cheaper way out.
Makes sense. Does anyone else have any questions for Luann?
No.
All right, thank you so much, Luann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the treasurer collector to join you. Her budget starts on page 58. There was an error in it being assembled. My apologies, I don't know quite how it happened, but what she submitted did not get imported correctly in, so I'm going to distribute a revised page and the first of the revision sheets that follow the pattern we used last year. So in the request being imported and then in the proofreading, So I'd just like to touch on this revision sheet, the way this works. So for instance, Monty Tex came in $34,956 dollars higher than what we had hoped for. And yet we were able to offset that by 32,000 because of those revenues from the regional school district. So that changed on the overview page, that $83 surplus to a $28.72 deficit. Then there's the $1,000 error in importing the original request for account 5110, and that creates a $38.72 deficit, neither being problematic, and I can speak to that later when we, or tomorrow night even, when we talk about getting ready for the school meeting.
Okay.
Okay, start on page 58. Personnel. The only change there would be mine, which is in my contract. Page 59 is the employee support. These are the classes that I'll be taking in deputy collector, treasurer meetings, and the like, and travel getting back and forth, and the school every year in August that I will be attending, and possibly the deputy collector.
And this is the revised page that we've just distributed you, which includes mileage going to the bank,
Correct.
which we had not been compensated for.
Page 60, purchase services. These are the real estate bills, excise tax bills, property tax bills, getting those out. And you're looking into, instead of doing 3 billings, doing 2 billings. It's very confusing for people, and this will cut down 1 mailing completely. And if we can get this to go through, this may pay for itself in 2 billings. So we're working on that right now.
We will need to find the $7,000 conversion internally within the FY18 budget, whether we approach the advisory committee. We find it internally, we deal with it with free cash. But in order to go from the 3 billings to 2 billings, we do have to change the billing template and the billing company, which has not been charging you for printing your bills, they found
Correct.
out.
We have not been
The
charged.
reason your bills have been cost as little as they do is they have only charged you postage for a long time. And so you need to make this change just to be able to stay within the budget that you've been expending.
Wow, okay.
And the charge for that new template is about $7,000. There is one small piece that Luann's generously agreed to help us out with. We will have to print the personal property taxes. You said about 100, Luann?
Yeah, it's about 100.
We will have to print those in-house and mail those ourselves, or there would have been another $7,000 template to do those as well.
Wow.
I'll come help you. Fold and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of find that fun. Don't ask me
100
why.
isn't bad. 61, supplies, we got postage, envelopes, which we go through quite a bit. Environmental, I have nothing. 63. This is tax taking and registering of the deeds. Advertising, we just did a tax title advertising, which was $980+ for that one day, one page. So, it's, the cost is up there. Okay, 261, this is the debt excluded. This shows on the DE1 for the
Wait,
retail.
wait, wait.
Page
wait.
261.
261, sorry.
Sorry. Let us get there.
You only have 5 or 6 pages to flip through.
Yeah, sorry.
$500,000 on the school van, and the interest on this one. On 262, these are all the non-excluded debts that are reimbursed from other funds.
Better what?
Reimbursed from other funds.
Do we have any questions? Any questions? Doug, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
No, I think I'm okay.
Advisory Committee, any questions?
Nice job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
hold on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
What are the plans for Templeton to restore their bond rating?
What's the plan?
Right.
What?
To restore the bond
Restore
rating,
the
what's the
bond
plan? Well, we're actually in the process now, but Carl, you wanna explain how we?
I think
we-
you've been doing it.
We,
You
we
have
tested the market, we
you
borrowed
have,
5 million.
audits that are up to date. We will have the draft 17, I think within a matter of a couple of weeks. The light and water plant experienced an unfortunate delay in getting some of their audit done. So frankly, we fell to the bottom of the pile when the auditor was ready to get back to it. You have begun to replenish your reserve accounts. You have now a formal set of financial management policies that, at least so far, we've been following. They lay a path forward. Much will depend upon, making sure we have a budget that's comfortably balanced for fiscal 19. Much of that will depend upon the conversation that you have tomorrow night with the schools, quite frankly. But in terms of all the things that a bonding rating firm is going to want to see, all of those are in place or being put in place. The challenge that you will have is absent substantial new growth revenues or substantial increases in state aid, you're locked in a very difficult financial cycle where the new revenues that you can generate, for the most part, will not be sufficient to meet your needs on a year-in, year-out basis. And that's the situation with many
Right.
Massachusetts communities. But I think that that's the only real stumbling block that I see. And you're just gonna have to rebuild that bond rating over time, because they're going to look at all you've accomplished, but that you had to do it all at once with a bit of a jaundiced eye. And it's the politest way I can put it.
Did that answer your question?
Well, so there's no like timeline or
You're-
date?
We're in the timeline now, we're in the process now.
You're doing everything there is. It's just like going on to Credit Karma or something else and trying to rebuild your own credit after a prolonged period of not having paid your bills on time or, the factors that they apply. This is a long, slow slog.
Right, so when would we try to apply to
Oh,
restore.
that's a different question.
Right.
Oh, applying for a
That-
bond rating, that's,
Right.
As shortly before we need to issue the permanent bonds as possible, so that we've had as much good history as we can possibly get. So if I was to speculate today, I would say calendar 2019. Because if we can push the bans off, frankly, to get through, if we can use bans through fiscal 19 and get an audit done, our audit, all our field work was done in August. We got stuck waiting for the light department. Not their fault. Don't misunderstand that, John. It's not their fault. But if we can push our bans through the end of fiscal 19, have our audit done again by August, September of 19, that would be the best time, because you would have had now 7 years of audits. 7 years of audits under your belt and a good 3-year stretch of stability without, shutdowns, all of the other kinds of things that have brought you some tough press.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't want to prematurely apply for a bond rating too, because it's a lot harder to get movement once you're already rated, correct? So that's why
You want the bond rating as close to when you're gonna issue the permanent bonds as possible. Because otherwise, they are buying bonds based upon, the longer it sits out there,
Right.
what they would consider to be a stale rating. It's just like trying to apply for a house. They wanna see your credit reporting as close to when you're applying for the mortgage as possible.
Yes, any other questions? Yes.
Are we gonna do the accountant too,
Are we good?
Once,
tonight, once
Yeah.
this, okay, I'll wait,
Yep.
that's more of an accountant question.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Anybody else have any other questions for the treasurer collector?
Nice job,
Nice.
Cheryl.
Good job.
This year.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
the accountant's budget starts on page 45.
Yeah.
And did we have those tabs, where's there, we have those tabs for everybody?
Yeah.
Hello,
Hello.
how are you? Good to see you.
So we're gonna give you shortly here tabs 11 and 12, where you can put school department information, and these, budget versus actual and the like. Hand those down, please. These are revenues as of a week ago, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. And you have expenses through Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, you've got those?
I'm
I have
sure
11 and
there's
12.
some
Yeah, I just don't have anything in it.
left. Need to steal one of those.
Give them
There's
back.
not enough
No.
there's not enough for the, select. I didn't hear what you said, absolutely. There aren't, unless you distributed them already.
There's only 3 of these.
Here, I'll just pass them down. and I won't
Okay,
take
that'll be
one.
fine, I'll get you one.
Doug.
Oh, I'm sorry. We gotta talk about this tomorrow morning.
Just making sure I got the right one. Does that go in 11 or 12?
You need one, Carter?
I don't know, I'm gonna do it. I'll just look at it this way. Oh, I'm
Carter, you
sorry,
probably
still
need another
holding
set.
mine.
Yeah,
Tab 11.
Good?
you've got them for everybody, right?
Here's another one.
I guess these are gonna be 12.
Unless there's more coming down, there aren't enough for everybody. My apologies, we'll get those to you if anyone's missing something. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Anybody need tabs?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good with tabs.
Okay, we ready?
over
Yeah, we
these
should-
two, cause I didn't get,
What-
going over these two, Kelly? Or we just, these is just.
They're really
our-
just informational.
Okay, thank you.
For you.
Did you get the?
We'll issue
No, I'm
one
getting one
each
after.
week before a budget for those who are interested in that.
Awesome. I guess we'll start at page 45.
So this is the personnel, everything is pretty much the same. I have added, additional time for Laura in the floating hours for, cause what we're finding is like for now, when we're trying to gear up for the open enrollment period, working through all of the adjustments, with the employees, all the extra time that's needed with that, I think that that will give her a little extra time for that stretch, to be able to handle, you know, that a little more efficiently than what she's able to do now with the hours that she has. On the employee support, most of these are for the certification and conferences. I've left in the Abrams Boot Camp in Municipal Law. I went to the school last week and I took the exam for the certification. However, I won't know if I've passed until mid-May. So, I've left that in there for training in case I don't pass. I took the exam with 45 other people, and a lot of those, it was like second, third, fourth time taking it that, you know, they had not passed, so.
Oh, you're gonna
So everybody say a
pass.
prayer and light a candle.
Yes, yes, so, you know, if I pass, those won't need to be in there, so we would have a little extra money to move somewhere else if we need it. But the rest of those are things that I need to still continue to attend to keep certification and keep my education for that. On page 47, your services, that's our current package, that we have for Vadar right now. I have spoken to, Tony Roselli, and, he has agreed to continue. He will, when the audits are completed, he will work up a, proposal for us, and he's agreed to stay at the 28,000. So we wouldn't have an increase in the audit cost. The OPEB calculations, we have contracted with Odyssey, for 2 years, and so we will pay them $3,000 this fiscal year and $3,000 next fiscal year for our OPEB evaluation. That will help us for the audit. That will be one less thing that we will have on the audit letter that, you know, we're not complying with. That will also give us, you know, a good idea of what we really need to be putting away in OPEB. And then the Harper's payroll fee. And that's now on my budget because the payroll is now handled in the accountant's office and not the treasurer collector's office. Then I have the supplies, 500, the regular, and that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for the town accountant?
You answered my question.
Okay.
Okay, so Roselli's gonna stay on to do FY18?
Yes, he has agreed that he would give us the proposal for the next, you know, fiscal year.
Okay,
And then, you know, we would discuss, you know, what he would look at for continued, you know, for years to come, but he definitely has agreed he will do FY18. So, and the same plan is what we did this year, is to get them out as early as possible so that we can get the field work done. And hopefully the water department, because they've now contracted with a different auditor, hopefully their audit will be able to be sped up faster, so we won't have to wait so long, and hopefully we can get the final audits completed sooner.
okay.
And again, I wanna be clear, this was a particular problem with their auditor, that I do think John has a handle on, and that, we will most likely not see again next year, with their new audit firm.
And the Worcester Regional, you know, they have to do the actuarial calculations that, we have, because that's really our liability. So we have to wait for their audit to be completed also, and their board of directors has to vote on that. It's usually the last board meeting or the first board meeting of October. So the earliest possibility we could ever probably have an audit is probably in November, because of the waiting for the water audit plus the Worcester Regional. There's the two things that we have to wait on.
Okay.
But with a balance sheet by mid to late September, we are able to get our free cash certified in time for use of a town meeting somewhere between Columbus Day and November Day, or Veterans Day, I'm sorry.
So at this point in time, FY17 will be done soon.
Yes, I spoke with him last week, he was there, and he's, like Carter had said, they came here in August, everything was good, but now, in waiting for the water, that we got put to the bottom of the list.
Mhm.
So he's now, he's finally getting slowed down, so he will be able to get back to us and be able to finish us out. And there's we have to have in March 27th is when we have to have our financials to the audit, or the bond council for our public disclosure.
Mhm.
So he's hoping to have that totally completed so that we can have final put in that statement instead of draft.
Okay,
So that's the plan.
all right. The other question I had was the certification of free cash.
Yes.
Do we anticipate any problems at all with having the Department of Revenue certifying
No.
free cash?
No.
None.
No.
Schedule A is in, they're getting the quarterlies that they've asked for. They've not indicated any concerns, and as long as we can do what we did this year, which was field work mid-August, we were able to have a draft trial balance by mid-September, and I think free cash was certified within less than a week.
Yeah. And I spoke with Mary Jean Handy last week, and she's very pleased with how things have turned around and the forward progress that we're making.
Okay, so free cash for FY17 will be certified, would it be certified for the annual in May?
Certified,
No, it's already certified.
it's already
The-
certified.
It's because we only get certified once. So when we got certified in the
Right.
fall, that was for FY17.
Okay,
So FY18 will be
these, the next,
fall.
okay,
This
November.
fall.
all right.
Yeah.
We hadn't done it in so long, I got
I
the
know,
timeline.
yeah.
Julie.
It happens.
It's true.
It happens.
Oh, that happens. It's really,
Yeah.
it's funny, but not funny, like that's a sorry but not sorry thing.
Yeah.
Getting better. Any other questions for the accountant? Yes.
Yeah, just the Vadar support service,
Yes,
that covers all the pack,
Everything.
it covers everything.
for the assessor.
Except,
Well, it covers the assessors, the tax collector, the accounting, and the tax title. That covers all of that. Not included in that, can I expound on that?
well, the advisory.
It doesn't cover.
It doesn't cover your support, your licensed user, and it doesn't cover,
Sewer accounts.
the sewer. We're potentially looking at bringing the sewer collections in-house July 1, so that would be an additional cost, but that would be with the sewer department. Because that's something that has been requested by the DOR in our 09 audit, plus every audit we've had for
Since then.
forever, and even before that. So we're trying to do what they have recommended and suggested, and we all think it will make things much simpler. One of the greatest things that it's gonna do for us is by having the sewer billing done in here with the collector, is when we have someone have an MLC on a house, if they owe a sewer lien or sewer bill, that's gonna go on that MLC now. That's gonna be paid up front. The way it happens now, it's only their taxes. So, and if they have a sewer lien or sewer bill, it doesn't get paid, but that will all be part of the process in a house being sold now, by having that data in the software. So that will be a huge help.
And the tax liens will be automatic.
Right, and we won't
Yeah.
have to, like this year, Luann was there, 80, she's Oh, I'm sorry. It was close to 100 sewer bills that came over for liens, and Luann has to manually enter all of those. It takes her about 2 days to do that, which if we do their utility billing here, it's like a 5-minute process, so.
Will eventually the same thing happen with the water?
No, because light and water, they handle all of their stuff on their own.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chairman, would be the insurance and benefits, and I'd like to draw your attention to page 265.
Pretty good. Open right up to it. Hey, there you go.
So I'll speak to what I've just handed out in a moment, but I'd like to walk you through page 265 and how we calculate it. Unlike some communities, you actually carry all of your enterprise funds in your general fund, and then you reimburse them. So there's no cost to you, but it does inflate the number substantially here. So you can see first, the property, POL, is public officials liability insurance. General liability, that's your automobile, employee acts and the like. WC is workers' compensation on the general fund, on the sewer. The light department buys their own policy on that side of the house. IOD is injury on duty. You may be aware that under Mass Chapter 111F, police and firefighters are not under a workers' comp scheme, but instead you pay them 100% of their salaries and then have to cover all of their medicals. So we have an insurance policy for that. Costs about $22,000 a year for the PD and for the fire and DMS. We then pay a third-party administrator to process all of those claims. That way we don't have any HIPAA issues. We aren't involved in processing any of that. And you have a deductible. You have to keep paying the first $5,000 of these expenses. So we have budgeted only for one, and there are years when that can be 2 or 3 payments. You have a pool of money that you keep on deposit with them. A couple years ago, you moved some of your insurance policies to a scheme whereby you increased the copay on hospitals and day surgeries, but you pay those. And so we've allowed for 2 hospital copays. These are inpatient, and 12 day surgeries. These are running a little bit lean, but we don't have a real history on that just yet. Bonding, treasurer collector, deputy treasurer collector, sewer assistants, the sewer department, the constables. Then we have the insurance, which is, in your case, health, dental, and life on the retirees. You can see they're broken down. This year we went to, was it 27%, January 1?
Yes.
That will increase 1% a year contribution from the retirees up until it reaches 35%. We had 0 increase on the insurance this year, and we projected 6% for next year. We have the active employees. Again, this is their health, dental, life, and short-term disability. I had projected a 6.25% increase. That had been my fingers crossed kind of hope. It came in at 7.52, and I'll speak to the package I've given you in a moment on that. Again, you'll see it broken down: general fund, light, water, and sewer. I do it that way because that lets me more readily identify the reimbursements I expect to receive from all of these various utility funds in the revenue section. WRRS is the Worcester Regional Retirement System, and that's what Kelly spoke to. They don't actually certify their assessments until November, and it's actually on a payroll that's almost 2 years old by the time it's certified to you. We spend about 23% of active employees' wages on the insurance, and that will only go up each of the next years because they need to reach full funding by, I believe it's 2035. Again, light department, water, and sewer do all reimburse us. Unemployment insurance, you did not pick pay-as-you-go. That was probably a good thing in 2015. But you're on a statutory scheme whereby you make a contribution. I've put a little bit in there because I think that depending on what happens with the ALS, you could see a small bump on January 1 from laying off the 2 employees. And then Medicare, we pay, we're not in Social Security, but we pay Medicare at the rate of .0145. And if you turn to page 266, you'll see exactly how I do it. I know I'm not the most beloved person when I ask accounting to put all this into these tables, but we actually do it.
Do you have a magnifying glass?
We can get you some landscapes. But I actually do every employee by exactly what their benefit profile is. And then at the bottom, you can see if I've assumed an increase. In this case, I assumed a MedX increase January 1 of 6%. That should be fairly safe. And I've assumed that increase of 6.25% on the others. And I'm not gonna belabor them, but you'll see I break down the retirees by the general fund, the several unemployments, the actives. You can see exactly how we do it here. And on page 270, you can see your trend rate. The town's trend rate has been pretty darn reasonable, actually. Since 2011 through fiscal 18, you've experienced uncompounded 6.42% increase in your health insurance rates. Now, I do need to point out that you'll see the notes below the fiscal year. That rate was only constrained at that level because you have made adjustments in the benefit platform each year. Now, what I don't want to take time to belabor here tonight, but I do ask y'all to read before you take action upon this budget, is the Insurance Advisory Committee. Spent 3 meetings, spent quite a bit of time, worked with the broker on a wide variety of adjustments, potential adjustments to the benefit platform to constrain costs. We had a good year this year. We'll hope for another good year next year. Our experience rating improved, and the plan without any changes to the benefit platform would increase 7.52%. The Insurance Advisory Committee has recommended that you maintain the current benefit platforms and accept the 7.52%. 3 pages in, you're gonna see a memo from me, which touches upon that and attaches all the various iterations that they looked at and then some. I will say 2 things. One, I think it's very important to not make dramatic changes in any given year, if you're contemplating that. 2, for the majority of our employees, we do not have a robust pay program. And they're mostly below where they should be in the marketplace. I've got some groups that are fairly close, and then I've got the balance that are pretty far off the mark. I'm not even gonna try to tell you they're fairly close. So maintaining a robust insurance offering is really very important. to recruiting and retaining personnel. The second thing is that, yes, if you accept the insurance advisory, you're about 1.25 above where I had been, which will be about $7,500 plus or minus. We'd have to go back in and find somehow. But I do think you need to pay special attention to the PPO, the indemnity plan, the legacy plan, where they can go anywhere and see anybody. And it's extremely expensive. Just closing the gap on 2 employees on the town side would save the town almost $10,000 by itself. So I would ask you to read the memo with all the attachments. Give me a call. There's quite a bit there. There are some members of the Insurance Advisory Committee here tonight, if you have questions of them. But at a minimum, I think we've got to close the gap on this PPO plan, where the current HMO is $2,054 roughly for a family, but the PPO plan is $2,750 for a family. And I think, you have to offer it by statute, but there are some things we could do that would really close that gap down. So I would ask you all to read that over, give me a shout if there's any questions, and as I say, there are some members of the Insurance Advisory Committee here tonight if you have any questions of them.
Thanks, Carter. Do we have any questions?
Oh, I mean, without reading everything, how can we?
There's quite a bit, but I wanted to get it out there, so you can start to read it, and I'll keep
Absolutely.
inviting IAC members to whatever night I think we're gonna be having these discussions.
That'd be great. Thanks, Carter.
And to the select board meeting, that decision will be a formal vote, so that'll actually be probably at the end of this month.
Great.
I'm sorry, Doug.
Who's up next?
Next is the group that is the community services. Because we've got a couple of issues, I'd like to take the library last, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And start with the Council on Aging, perhaps.
Sure.
Which is on page 221.
Mm-hmm.
221 is what I have, yes. Yes, you can probably go right to the 5100 account.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
nice job on your memo as
I
well.
was gonna say the same thing. This is really
Great
awesome.
job.
Honestly, this is, this template has gone far
Phenomenal.
forward for multiple departments.
It was
I
well
think.
written.
So the wages start on 223, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
It includes everybody, the drivers,
Mhm.
which are, reimbursed by March. The Meals on Wheels, Carter has only allotted me half of what we had this year. It's still up in the air what's gonna happen there. We still have myself, and Sue, our family, our services coordinator, and, our activity coordinator at 19.5 hours. This is pretty much the same as it was last year. Mark, if you pay the hours, we get them back. It's as simple as that. It looks like the money is there on paper, but it's not. We spend it.
Right.
On page 225, employee support. We have seminars that, I attend, I send, Sue, 2 seminars that are very informative. And then there's the annual MCOA conference. We have allotted for one person to go out of the town budget and one person to go on the formula grant. The cell phones are reimbursed by MART. The MCOA membership dues you pay with your formula grant, and the license to show movies you pay with the formula grant. On to page 231. We have my senior center software support. That price has never changed since we've had that software. I don't know that it will ever change. Of course, it'll go up this year.
Just
Now
because you said that?
It said that, yeah, but knock on wood. The Rico copier lease has been moved to, the leases with all the other copiers.
Town, yep.
Yeah. Yoga instructor that I had originally budgeted has been moved to the rec.
Or the development services, or community services
Yeah.
revolving fund.
Yeah.
I got you.
Um,
Good resource.
yeah,
It says move to the formula grant or the revolving fund?
Right, so the,
Is it really just the revolving fund?
well, it depends on whether or not the revolving fund gets approved.
Okay,
Has to be
okay,
created at the
Okay.
annual town meeting,
okay,
and the spending limit that we've asked for, which I worked through both with Diane and with Scott Dill. If the meeting approves it at that level, if they reduce that level dramatically, then we've got a real
Okay.
problem we have to figure out
Okay.
a way around.
thank you.
I budgeted for program instructors, and that can be paid out of the formula grant. And then Gardner News advertisements, if that's for drivers, that will be paid, reimbursed by the, by March. On page 236. Office supplies. The majority of that can be paid with, the formula grant. I left $500, in the town budget. And then the, gas is reimbursed, by Mart. $246 is intergovernmental, I don't have anything. 247 is, other, and that's volunteer appreciation. Very important. That's 560, and that will be reimbursed by March, formula. And that's it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just two questions.
Sure.
The first question is.
Chairman?
Hold on, yes.
Cameron,
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Can
For
you
the-
speak up? a little?
Yeah, for the MCOA conference, can you just walk me through what that is exactly for? What are they?
3,000.
It's the Massachusetts Council on Aging
Mhm.
Conference, and it's where, most of the directors and, some of their support personnel go every year. It's an educational conference.
Okay.
It's also a chance to, network, exchange ideas. Last year we did not go, and it looked to be one of the better conferences.
Have you gone in any years prior?
Yes,
Okay. And that's held locally in Mass, right?
yes, this
Okay.
year it's gonna be at the Cape.
Okay.
Last year it was, in Danvers.
Right, excellent. Yeah, I'm just curious what that was. And then, I lost my train of thought here.
I think
Oh.
you've been hanging out with my people.
Yeah, maybe. We have on there, which is the 560 for the employee appreciation. What event?
Volunteer appreciation.
Volunteer, yes. What did you have for an event last year for that, for the volunteer appreciation?
I just had it at Christmas time.
Mhm.
I catered a meal for the volunteers
Okay.
at Christmas time, and they loved it.
How many volunteers do you currently have for the COA?
35.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, hi Dan. Just a quick question for my own benefit here. The drivers, it says reimbursed through Mart, that's 100% reimbursed through Mart for the drivers? And then, if I understand this correctly, it says we recover 33% of their wages, administrative costs. So that's the total cost of the drivers, we're reimbursed 33% of that total cost for administration?
Yes.
If I may, that is what they tell us. One day it's a situation that seems to,
Well, I've gotten confirmation now that it's been, the contract is coming, it's in stone.
okay. Yeah. So,
It's a soft stone?
Yeah.
so if I can turn your attention to page 19 for a moment, please. This year, we carried all the drivers and we carried the full 33%. I want to carry all the drivers because if the rides are there, we really need the money. But if the rides aren't there, we wouldn't realize the full 33%, which is revenue to the town. So as a safety factor for going into the next year, I've only carried as a revenue projection 16.5%. So let's say that we only have 2/3 of the rides. If I carried it all 33% across the board, we would just have a bigger delta on what we did not get. So that's why the number won't look exactly right, because we made a conscious decision to assume a lower ridership than we have. So we have the budget if we need it, because we can't give the rides if we don't have the money, but we have reduced the risks on the revenue side by assuming lower ride volumes.
And it's all based on need or
Yeah.
request.
Diane has been working hard. I'm not one to blow smoke at the department heads, I don't think. But Diane and her people have been working hard. That schedule's being adjusted so that, you know, you go to Worcester on a given day and you go to Boston on a given day. And the effort being to have 2 or 3 riders on that given day as opposed to 2 or 3 days on which people need the rides. Now, that's not as convenient for the users. I get that. But remember, we pay the Medicare, we pay the workers' comp. There's some of this that we carry. So wherever we can reduce mileage and yet get people the service they need, everybody's better off. The other thing I want to remind everybody of is going into this, Diane had 3.75, and I know people don't like to talk about FTEs, but a year ago, 15 months ago at this time, it was 3.75 employees at the Council on Aging. Today, there's 2.5. 1.25 people have been reduced. Some by choice, some by force. But they have been reduced, and so That's what's driven some of these. Do you want to speak to the hours?
I would love to.
It's an off-budget item, but this is an opportunity to make everyone on the board aware of a change that Diana is consulted with her counsel on. Everyone's in agreement, and will help address some of that reduction in staffing.
Could I just ask a question as well?
Sure.
Are you gonna speak, I'd like to know if you would walk us through like a typical week of, how many people come through, where they're from, what they're doing, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, I mean, you saw the building today.
I did, and it was packed. And people were laughing, and, you know, I mean,
Every Monday, we have between 30 and 35 people in to play pitch. We also had a Golden Agent meeting today. We had someone in the library most of the day. We have computers for them to use to come in and do whatever they need to do on a computer. We have Wi-Fi set up so they can bring their own computers, or they use one that we have. So today it was hopping. On Tuesday, I have these stats. By the way, according to MART, we have the second most efficient COA that runs our own transportation program.
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's
Congratulations.
pretty proud of that. On Tuesdays, we don't have generally a set program. We save that for speakers or, as a day to run, a special trip. We only do a couple of those a month if we can. But for people walking in, on an average, we have 31 people come in. Wednesday, I don't know why, it's one of our lower volume days, but that's bingo day. It's 19. But those are only the people that are swiping in. I can't stand there and say, oh, you didn't swipe in. You know. Thursday, on average, we have 26 people come in. Friday, when we don't schedule anything, we have 11 people come in. That's an average week. So we have, Mondays we have pitch. Tuesdays, we don't typically have something every Tuesday. Wednesday, we have bingo. Thursday, we have cribbage. Creative stitchers. And Friday, there's
Yoga and line dancing.
yes. I can't even remember everything. And we've also got,
Hold on one second,
meditation.
Diane, hold on one second, yes.
If I can ask,
Yeah.
how many of these individuals that are coming in on a daily basis are from Templeton? Are from the 3 villages? Do you know that? Do you have that broken down or no?
I do,
Because I know we share with other communities.
yeah. A big question that I get a lot of time is how many people come from Phillipston? So I specifically pulled that, statistic, and we have 3 people that we're coming from Phillipston. One person was bringing her mother for activities. Her mother has since passed away. The other person is a veteran, so he attends the veterans support group. And the other one comes for stitching, and she volunteers more than she's there for stitching, so. My numbers for Templeton people, 589.
Well, those are your members, correct?
No, participants.
That come in on a weekly basis?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a,
Yearly?
yeah. That's just this year. It's not the whole year.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Which is a good number to have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But, our our residents go elsewhere as well
Absolutely.
and
They go-
participate in other towns'
They go to
activities, sorry, I couldn't think of the word.
The pitch players have a whole circuit.
Oh.
They must go all
I might
the
have to
way
get in
around.
on that.
They have
Oh
a-
darn, I can't.
They have a circuit,
Right,
so, yeah,
okay,
it's a reciprocal,
it's reciprocal.
yeah,
589, that's awesome.
yeah. It's a hop and joy, and it's not just the 70 and the 80-year-olds.
Meals on Wheels.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Quick question, so you said the membership rate was 560, somewhere around that number?
That's 589 active.
Active, okay. So currently, right now, and so to be in that criteria, to be an active member, 65 plus, or is there any sort of age? Could I become a member, or what is the qualifications for that?
50.
50? Oh, I can
Fifty.
count.
50,
You're a
okay.
freshman.
Give me,
You have a long time away.
yeah, so that would, if,
I'm there.
let me
I
just
love it.
crunch a quick number here then.
You wanna know how many people?
Yeah, well, I have census data right here, so,
1,579 according to the 2010 census.
I have so 55 and plus, I have close to 2,000. So you'd be at a 25% participation rate on a year-on basis, okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's actually,
That's pretty good.
So Meals on Wheels, I mean, obviously Carter gave you some direction to decrease the Meals on Wheels dollars. Is that what what you said?
he cut my Meals on Wheels.
Okay. And what are your options out there at this point?
Let's be honest.
Let's put it on the table. Let's put it on the table. So, but your budget was cut for Meals on Wheels, and do you have options at this point?
I am
For the-
I'm in discussion with MOC.
Okay.
Of course, their take is that you're not gonna cut it, you're gonna continue to deliver 5 days a week. I don't have the funding to do that.
Understood.
They don't have the funding, they're having funding issues too. So, I'm asking people to volunteer. Nobody's volunteering. At the money that he's given me, I could deliver 2 days a week and deliver frozens for the other days of the week.
Mhm.
We currently only have, is it still 15?
Yes.
15 people that we're delivering to, which is cyclical. We're on the down, it fluctuates 3
It does,
years.
yep.
We're on the downhill.
Okay.
In another couple of years, it'll be back up to 35, 40 people. That being said, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Still working on it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I had one other question. On your postage, you're requesting, $3,600, but yet I'm looking at some of your statements are being paid by Friends of the Templeton Elders. Isn't that separate from your account, or no?
They pay it up front, and then they're gonna bill me.
And then you reimburse the nonprofit for paying for your postage, correct? I'm just trying to figure it out, because I'm seeing some of yours is
We're gonna-
nonprofit.
Right, we're going to pay for the postage out of the formula grant.
Okay.
Friends is paying for the printing.
No, there's no cost for the printing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mark pays for, reimburses for the fuel. What about the car? Who pays for the fuel for the car and the maintenance? The town does.
Mart only pays for the maintenance for one
The vans?
van. They own one van.
Oh, I
The
see.
town owns 2 vans in the car.
Okay.
Pays the gas.
Okay.
But they pay for the gas for the one van
Okay.
and the maintenance.
And we pay for the other 2 vans and the car and the insurance. For all of them, to include the one from Mart, does Mart pay that insurance?
Well, depending upon the last go-round, without a contract in hand,
Right.
we were to provide that insurance. The challenge is,
How can you provide insurance something you don't own?
that's the challenge.
Okay, understood. Okay. I'm
Unless they
just
give
trying
it
to
to us as a lease, we have to have some sort of interest in the vehicle in order to insure it.
Right.
So Maya fought that fight, and they finally saw the light, and the, rider that they wanna put in the contract is that each party is gonna be responsible for their own damage.
Okay. Oh, seems, okay, I got it. Which is still kind of concerning, because if there is damage, who pays for the damage and what accounts does it come out of?
Well, the attorney hasn't seen the contract yet.
Okay.
You know, it hasn't been vetted by the town.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I am no way going to.
Can you imagine? I mean, because that would be, that could potentially be bad.
Yeah,
Well, we have to see the contract, because if the contract includes a $1 a year lease of the van, that gives us an ownership interest in it, or a financial interest in it sufficient to insure it, and truthfully, added to our fleet doesn't cost much of anything.
Understood. Okay. Thank, you have something?
Yeah, I just was, gonna ask a question here, and it probably, well, there's no stupid question. On the Meals on Wheels, you have the, you know, wages at $12,400 and to cut in half the $6,200 and so forth. I was wondering if you could tell us, you know, let's say what that $12,000 employee for Meals on Wheels does, and it was my understanding, at least from the past, that there was something like I don't know what it is, a $2 copay or whatever that the recipients of the Meals on Wheels either can, or is a donation or some.
they pay Mock, the agency that provides the meal. We pick the meals up in Gardner, and put them in a hot, cold truck so that they're, given to them at temperature. And we deliver the meals, all over town. That's what our driver does. But the $3 copay that they pay goes to Montechusett Opportunity Council, for the cost of the meal.
So, and this fee for the driver for Meals on Wheels is not recouped from none of that. And just a quick back to what, and I'm sorry for doing this.
That's right.
But when we were talking earlier about the salaries for the drivers, it says fringe benefits by town. Is that, and I know Carter, when he was speaking, he just mentioned a couple, you know, things with insurance. That basically just what it is, just, we have contract insurance with the drivers?
Well, you have your,
Unemployment, workers' comp, Medicare, and you have a statutory obligation, because we have more than 5 employees, to offer sick leave, 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. And that's state law.
Yes, Liz?
Carter, can you provide a reasonable rationale besides budget for cutting it in half?
I find that people don't get serious, no disrespect,
no,
about finding alternatives until they're faced with there being no money, whether it's Congress or local. And I believe that there are alternatives that need to be fully explored. Some of those may require lobbying with Mock. There are Meals on Wheels programs across this nation where they're delivered 4 days a week, and on the 4th day, it's a frozen dinner that is for the Friday. There are Meals on Wheels programs that are delivered by volunteers across this nation. And so, by cutting it in half, it provides an incentive to find a solution, and yet gets us past the fall town meeting in case all of our very best efforts to find a solution have failed. We can figure out to do something else. And
I
if
hear what you're
can, when I
saying.
look at, as a bean counter, when I look at the number of folks that are served, it's close to $1,000 a year for each person that served. $15,000 in costs, $15,000. And I look at where else does that money needed? And we have some interesting conversations, Diane and I, when we get behind the closed door. I just felt it was a cut that I was comfortable with proposing.
Yes, Liz?
Being a resident of the town with two elderly parents and some other friends that are elderly that most likely will be using the service soon, I find that outrageous to put it on the backs of the elderly. I think there are other places that same money could be cut. And that's, I do not agree with your rationale in your statement, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any questions?
If I could, I know if we could just keep this really tight, but speak to the hours, please.
Because we've absorbed 1 point, however many people it is, Carter suggested, and I was wholeheartedly in agreement, that we close the senior center for a few hours a week so that we could work uninterrupted, with not answering the phones and not having people come in and out, because the two jobs that, or the 1 point whatever job is, those people were taking care of statistics, and those are very, very important for funding. And we need to keep that up and be able to maintain our other, other duties.
Mhm.
So, the board has agreed, and I've spoken to Carter about it, closing from 8 to 12 on Wednesdays, and then opening up at 12 o'clock in time for bingo. And that's a good time of day for us, and it will work well for the seniors. And that will give us time to get those duties done, and hopefully,
Give you a little breathing
yeah,
room.
You have 4 hours that you need in the
yeah,
middle of the week.
yeah.
And this would start when?
I would like to start April 1st.
So we wanted the board to be aware of it. She has consulted with her board, but we wanted both boards and the public to be aware of it. And unless there's any concerns, we'll start to publicize that over the next 2 weeks.
Okay. I have no issues. You guys have any issues with that? You guys have any issues with that? Okay. Great. Anyone else have any questions for? See, not, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Great work.
Can I ask a question?
Can you ask a question? No, we're not during the budget process. Maybe next Monday you can. Okay. Or you can email one of us, me, if you want.
Recreation and culture starts on page 256. Scott, you wanna? This budget is pretty much the same as last year. The major difference that I'll draw your attention to is that the rec commission did not request the summer program this year, believing that need was met by the school program. The only other real, not so much change, but over in the warrant, you're gonna see a request to amend the bylaw with respect to revolving funds, to add a revolving fund for the community services, which would cover rec, all the sports, cover the council on aging, cover all those units, both to clean up some accounting issues. They'll deal with the internal accounting of how many kids played softball and this or that. So it's gonna make the accountant's life easier. And it also will give them some flexibility. If they have a program idea in October that they wanna launch in May, they don't need to get a special appropriation as long as it's fee-based and they can run it through. So, Scott, I hope I haven't stolen your thunder, but that's really,
That's it?
He just stole your thunder.
You're all done now?
I'm good.
You're good, okay.
As long as he gets his revolving
That's all I care about.
And that's all.
I can't emphasize enough how much of his ability to do business is really gonna be dependent upon that revolving fund and how much easier it's going to make, the accountants' life with respect to these monies.
It'll bring everything together, like you said. It's going so many different directions in so many years that accounting wise, it's a nightmare for her, it's a nightmare for me. Or prior boards, it was a disaster. You didn't know, you, so many things moving at once. Now being one revolving account, like you said, we can grow at the blink of an eye without even, because ideas are coming across my desk every day for different things that we wanna do, so with that revolving account, I think that'll help.
Okay.
My budget was, he said, pretty cut and dry. There's 3 stipends within it, for the directors. I wish it could be more, but it is what it is.
I wish it could be more.
Yep, I mean, we're lucky to have these people, they volunteer more than the stipends even worth. I mean, it's a 40-hour job a week, no doubt. So that stipend, it's a little help, but, you know, maybe down the road we get in a better way when we get there. But right now, we'll take what we can take, and it's for the kids at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to, the programs that we do, so. Budget-wise, I think we're pretty good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I wondered, Scott, if you could talk about, like, some of the ideas that how things are going since you came on board, and, I know I'm excited, but I wondered if you could share some things that have been going on, Gilman, or could you just give everybody an idea?
Our board is 7 members strong. We have a full board, which is very nice to have. We have 4 new members, and I'm the new chairman, so it's pretty much a brand new board, which is good to have new blood once in a while to really shake up the pot, and especially where a board's been together for a long time, a lot of ideas just kind of get thrown on the table, and they don't grow. With a new board, these people come in and they want to change the world, which is great, but we have to live in the world of a budget, so they have to bring their ideas back down to life, so. Go and Wait is a story amongst itself, which couldn't be told at this time because it's such a big story. It's all volunteers, it's always been volunteers, that whole park has been volunteers, so. It's a gem that Templeton has, and my vision, my goal is to expose that park and to bring Templeton to that park and let the residents know that we do exist and we do have programs and we do have softball tournaments coming, we have, the soccer, the softball, all that stuff that's up there now, but there's more to come. I mean, we wanna have movies in the park again, we have a concession stand that's 90% done, we just have to finish it up, so. When that's done, we'll have a full working bathrooms and concession stand up there, so that's for town use, anybody can take benefit in that and make profit off of that, which is a great thing for the town. The police department, the fire department, everything that in town, you can go up there and use it, but my biggest thing is just to draw attention to rec sports, and not just rec sports for kids, adults. We've always been kids, but as adults, like the senior center, they have a club, you have to be 50 to get in, what about those guys and girls in between that? That's what we need to capitalize on, those people too. We have a men's basketball league that has exploded, it's absolutely exploded. I have a 25 and older, I fill the middle school gym on Saturday nights, and the high school gym is filled on Saturday nights, so that is something I didn't think that was gonna get that big, but it did. And we tried a volleyball, it just didn't really get off the ground, so we'll try that next year, an adult volleyball league. Rugby was mentioned, but it's not gonna happen. Denied.
No rugby?
Same thing.
I think there's a
Denied.
league order out there.
It was thrown out there, but we
That's funny.
our swim program has been around 30+ years, I believe it's been in existence.
By the same
charge.
person.
Same person, yes, yep. That's a huge program, I'm very excited to see that kick off again this year. Summer program, we had to scratch out from the budget. Narragansett Regional School District does an extended day program at their facility, so to doing a playground for 4 hours a day really didn't make much sense when they send their children there for 8 hours a day. Parents now work, back in the day, you know, parents didn't work, so it was mom that stayed home and dad that stayed home. Now, usually both parents are working, So that child has to go somewhere for 8 hours, not just 9 to 12 and hope that they get picked up. That's how playground used to run, but I think it's times have changed, unfortunately, we just can't offer that service anymore to the town. But Extended Day has stepped up, it's a great program, they have well-structured, very well thought-out days, those kids stay busy a lot, they're very structured, so that's why we decided to pull that program back. And it just makes sense for the town and parents to 8 hours instead of 4 hours, and then trying to figure out what you're gonna do with your child after 4 hours, so. That worked out good. Gilman Waite is an option for them. It's a secure park for them. They can come up from the high school. If they wanna spend a day trip up there, they go to Lake Dennison once a week, they can come to Gilman Waite for once, and play basketball and use the playgrounds and everything they do up there, so. That's a big win, but there's a lot to go. We've just started, and hopefully we can continue where we're at, and we have big plans. And, the board's been great. Every one of them has had input. Carter's been great with me. They've given me a lot of good feedback, I've given them feedback, we've all worked together, and I think that's what this town needs, is all these departments working together, and I've seen it, we're all coming together, and it's making life a lot easier for communication wise, because I can send an email and I'll get 4 back right away, which is great, because that's what we need to do, even though we're a small little pile in this, but we still matter, so. That's all I have.
Thank you
Look forward to
so
working with you all.
1 second. Yes, Kelly?
I just wanted to let you all know that working with Scott is phenomenal. It has been a night and day difference, in working with the recreation, and he is definitely to be commended for his efforts on the financial piece of the recreation department. It is a night and day difference.
Great.
He's doing a fabulous job.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just had a quick question. There's a line item here for a community services director.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have one?
That's the proposal, yes. The proposal is to create the Office of Community Services and to bring a current 30-hour employee up to 40, which addresses both some needs from the staffing side and is paid for to some degree by their management of one of the enterprise funds, and addresses a directive from this board that employees should either be 19.5 or full-time, trying to eliminate that middle ground where people had been working 23, 26, 30 hours, and yet they get the full insurance package, which we have to pay for 100 cents. We can't even apportion it. The minute someone is 20 hours a week, state law considers them a benefit-eligible employee, eligible for 100% of the insurance packages. So we're paying the same $2,042 a month for somebody, whether they work 20 hours, 20.5, or 40. So the board's been on a drive to try to be on one side of that equation or the other.
Do we have any other questions?
Got a question, just a comment. You're right, you and your team and your participants do matter, and I appreciate all you've been doing. I mean, you've been doing a great job.
No? If you still work with Carter on the given weight policy and field use procedures and stuff?
Yep, we nailed that down. We actually have 2 softball tournaments that have the policy in hand.
Good.
And we
Maybe it's stepping in?
Yep, we've changed it 1,000 times, but
Okay.
like we said, it's gonna change as it goes. I mean,
Yep.
it has to. That's how we're gonna fine tune this, and it will be one, Alan's working on the same process.
Okay.
So have one for the commons and so forth also, so.
And part of that is to not shock people. We don't
Right.
want to lose a long-standing tournament by going from here, all this used to be free and you used to be able to do whatever you want, to now you got to give us an insurance policy.
Right.
We're going to use our equipment instead of you just doing it, and you got to pay us some rental. So that really needs to be phased in over a couple of years.
Understood. But you're doing a good job with that.
Thank you. And the 2 recipients that have held tournaments here for many, many years, there was a lot of growing pains when it was first presented to them.
Mhm.
Oh my God, and he's right, you just can't shock and awe them because they'll walk away. They'll go somewhere else but they've, you know, I've walked them off the ledge, they're okay now, but they have to realize that we have our park to take care of, we have our town to take care of, and there's reasons why we have these policies in place. You know, a lot of things in years past have not been locked down, and now we have to lock down every inch of town. There's no other, it just doesn't make any sense to allow big things without backup plans.
And I know the next question is gonna be, well, if there's funds that are gonna be made by utilization of the field, where do those funds go? Well, I would assume they would go to the Gilman Waite.
In the
Buildings and
revolving fund.
Under
grounds.
the revolving fund.
Yeah.
Okay,
Revolving.
just wanna make sure we're all clear where that's going.
Yep, it goes right back in.
That's the proposal in the
Right.
warrant at
In
this
the
point.
warrant.
Right.
When we get to it, you may wanna refine that a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But the intent is that those rental fees, program fees would all go into the revolving fund. They can be used for maintenance and programmatic costs.
understood,
And expanding,
Exactly.
right.
expanding.
That's why the revolving account's gonna be the savior of this department, because it's crucial that we get that vote through, because it's been so many years where we've been so scattered that it needs to come together,
Well,
and it'll,
Make sure you tell your friends.
I don't have many,
Get-
but.
To be at the town meeting then, so they can vote, show up at town meeting, that's where that's where the magic happens. Does anyone else have any other questions? I see none. Next, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, the floor looks nice, by the way.
Mr. Chairman, I'll
Yes.
touch briefly on veteran services, if I may. Page 212 is the 5100 account or the personnel. We have the salary of the veteran services director and an hour a week proposed for the community services director. On page 213, that is the 5110. Now, this is a new VSO. We unfortunately separated from the service of the town, the prior agent.
Mhm.
And the new person has only been on board for, I think, about 2 weeks, if that. And so we need to do two things, both make sure that they're getting appropriate training, appropriate exposure to their peers and to other information, and then travel reimbursements for when they're going to the VA, transporting people. If we can't get the MART to take them, reimburse it there. On page 16, there's a small software program that was asked for. On page 219, there's a modest amount of office supplies and postage. And then, my apologies, but I cannot give you a good breakdown of page 220. I don't have the data to do it. I didn't have numbers of active cases. There's a reason we have a new VSO. I just didn't have good data to project for that. So I've had to go with some historic data of 70,000 there, Mr. Chairman.
So you had a request of 164,000 for chapter 115
That
benefits?
is what the former VSO requested, yes, sir.
Okay. And you dropped that down to 70,000,
Oh, yes, there was no justification.
understood.
So I had to go with historic expenditure patterns, which, as you well know, can vary widely. Deaths, folks moving in, indigent needs can arise. There is no easy way to really project that one.
Understood.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to cable, which is tab 6.
Well, before we do that, does anybody have any questions about veteran services? Any questions? Okay.
It's just, I'm just trying to compare, looking at veteran services versus, council on aging and some of the other things, and looking at just fairness across on the training aspects of things. And just generally, and this is a general question, because I'm just noticing a pattern.
Sure.
How, is the board's view that all the different positions should be allocated certain amount of training with certain budget for expenses for things? Because there seems to be a little bit of a some departments are getting more, some are getting less, and this is very cursory, so I apologize if I missed something in here. Can you?
Well, I can tell you on Veteran Services, because there's a new Director of Veteran Services, she has to go through additional training versus the annual train-up that she would, or he would usually receive at the annual conference. So this is additional training that a new Veterans Officer would receive, kind of like what the previous Veterans Officer received prior to going, starting her jaunt down the road. So this is for, at least on the Veteran Service side, for a new Veterans Officer to get trained up and through Boston and prior to going to the, most likely the October training.
Okay.
Yes?
Each department and each has different organizations, either that they belong to or that they have to go to in order to maintain a certification or receive a certification, like Luann or the accountant or the treasurer collector, or, so that's maybe why it seems a little skewed to you. Or the COA has to go to, her own
Conference.
type of trainings or conferences, so it's not fair or unfair, it's it's based on their need.
Right. Like I said, I was just looking at the differences, kind of
That's-
going, all right, there's got to be a rationale behind
That's
this. someplace.
probably
It's
why
a
we haven't
needs.
said very much, because it's what they need, not what they,
Want.
No,
want.
I'm not, I'm just, because on some of them I noticed that it was way low.
Yeah.
It seemed, at least seemed to me, cursory, very low, and other things
They
seemed a
just
lot
don't- they
higher.
don't need
And
any
so
more than
I was just,
Yep.
general comment. Thank you.
Understood.
You're welcome.
Ting so much. Any other thing on Veteran Services? Okay, moving on, Carter.
So I would take up the cable at tab 6. Steve and Jackie are both here. Steve, you wanna? Sure. That's where everybody else got to sit.
Good evening.
Steve, how are you? It's good to see you.
So Steve, I'll speak to the Community Services Director piece. If you want to speak to the rest of the budget, please.
If you wish, the board should know that because I serve as station manager on a contract basis, report to the town administrator for that, as well as the cable committee.
Mhm.
I also serve on the cable committee. Last year, if you recall, I filed conflict of interest forms
Mhm.
and recused myself from budget matters. So, do you want me,
If you're most comfortable, Steve, I'll take it.
and I'm here to answer any questions.
Why don't we do it that way, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
This is a commission, the only commission that had been granted stipends. There was $3,000 apiece. Steve had not taken his, as he mentioned. And in fairness to all of the other boards and commissions across this town that do yeoman's work without compensation, I did not believe it was reasonable that this be stipended, and so I reduced that to 0. The manager-director salary is in here, the video production assistant is here as well. I'll speak to the community services director at the end. On page 300, this is the employee support. There's some video training that they're able to take advantage of. And then I am hopeful that they will become a more frequent participant with at cable public access organizations. And so I put, I didn't know a good number to put in, so I put a couple $100 in for them to attend some of those PEG groups. On page 301, which is purchase of service, some potential work for an electrician, tech consultant. They have phone and internet, and they alarmed the building at 3 Elm Street. It's here instead of being in buildings and grounds because it's a utility fund. It can carry its own costs on these items. And so rather than running them through Alan's budget and Alan sending them a budget, it's really a lot simpler just to put it here and let it be paid direct. On the 302 account, there's a modest amount for office supplies. miscellaneous equipment, whether it's a new camera, tripod, microphones, whatever it is that he needs. They get the use of the building, but we heat it, that's behind the emergency management building. It's the old food pantry, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And then the equipment, potential repairs over the course of the year. On page 303, there is a small reserve in here, similar to what is in the select board's budget, which would be, after evaluations and discussion, be transferred to the 5100 for raises. They have some IT and indirect costs that they would reimburse the town, and they would reimburse the town the Medicare, unemployment, insurance, and retirement costs that we incur on their behalf. And that is it for that. So I would return to page 299. The Community Services Director would take a 30-hour position and move it to 40. 6 of those hours would be spent on cable TV and community communications. And we would recover those costs of salary and pro rata benefits. One of those hours would be spent over in recreation, one with senior services, one with rec and culture, and then one with the veterans. So that rounds out the 40 hours, but the primary added expense is recovered through the recouping of benefits and labor through the cable enterprise fund. This would use approximately $75,000. We anticipate revenues in the nature of 125, give or take, which would leave them with a surplus at year ends of $50,000.
Yes, Liz?
What happens to that $50,000?
It stays in the enterprise fund. It is certified as retained earnings, together with anything that they don't spend out of this year. And then just as with sewer or water, it can be used in the future for operating. I think the intent is that it would be used for capital, for a better studio facility that could provide more community participation, perhaps a joint media program with schools and others. But these, I can't even imagine what's invested in that little room behind the curtain that the wizard sits at. But these are very expensive operations to set up. Particularly if you have to move the head end there, and the redirect the fiber. That's
I'm sure.
horrifically expensive.
I'm sure. I was just trying to figure out.
Yeah, it stays there, gets certified, and is subject to town meeting appropriation.
Liz, these are all great questions.
I hope so.
You keep clarifying them with, don't.
Any other questions for Mr. Castle? Who was first?
Just,
All right,
I'll go first.
go ahead.
I just noticing allocation for last year for purchase of services was 28,500. I was just wondering what was in much.
This room,
This room, really?
cameras, the equipment in there.
So,
Yeah, better mics and stuff.
right, okay. But only used about 3,500 of it so far this year, so.
Well, that was an expense for, I think, the previous fiscal year, or may have been before that, but, or a misunderstanding.
We also made a supplemental appropriation at the fall, because this was the very first year that we'd had the enterprise fund. It had been run as a grant fund before that.
Okay.
And at the fall, basically, the full boat was appropriated, because it was unclear as to whether or not we were gonna be able to do a new study, exactly where it would be located, what might be required. And I think that's gonna be an evolution, because they're in the old food pantry now, there's been some talk of the Kiva Center. We've looked in the basement of the Council on Aging. Diane's smiling at me again, we'll have another closed-door conversation soon, I think. So the money was appropriated sort of in case of. Is that a fair?
Yes, and I don't know if that answers your question, but we did spend about 28.5 on this system here. Last year, we spent 8,000 or 9,000 on new HD cameras for remote shoots. That, each of those cameras are $1,500, so. My first rule when the kids used them is, what's the first rule? Don't drop the camera.
It's a good rule.
Yes, and, we need more equipment, but, it can get very expensive. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I was just noticing the variance from last year to this year, what you're
It can vary
budgeting.
widely. I'll tell you a story. I spent 3 hours today in the old food pantry, 55 degrees, trying to fix a problem with our software and hardware. And by the way, the internet connection there is deplorable. I really need to get Comcast in there. We're down below 1 megabit per second.
Oh my
And
God.
we send huge files around,
Right.
like 60 gigabytes from here wirelessly. So,
Well, you're not the only one.
I know.
This is Templeton, so, I pay for 400 and I get 10, so believe me, I understand.
Well, I think that
But-
he needs to do something about that.
But we were in there and trying to fix something with a flash drive and whether we had to upgrade the Adobe Flash and try to figure out the browser situation. I was on call with tech support, sticking my head behind a rack. And the gentleman on the call was ready to, replace our $8,000 unit. Send it in. Well, how long you been using it? 10 years. So those usually last 6. So just as a, it can get expensive in a big hurry. Not as much as highway trucks.
I was just gonna say, I just talked to Alan.
Fire.
A ladder truck. Okay, any other questions for Steve? Thanks, Steve, for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate it. You are appreciated.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Who's next here?
Our new Community Services Director,
Oh, nice.
assuming that proposal moves forward, and I'll talk with you at length about that when we get into the warrant and implementation. So at this point, she's really here in her role as Director of the Library.
Hi,
starting-
Jackie.
Hi.
Starting at page
Everybody.
248.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, you can stay. We're
to
not voting on
avoid
it.
possible conflict
We're not vo-
and/or ethic violations, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Well, you don't need to, since
I
we're
know
not voting
that,
on
but
anything.
I'm gonna play it safe.
Oh, that's on you, but you don't need to.
I know,
Okay,
thanks.
you're very welcome.
Page 248, I believe, is where the library starts.
48 is our personnel page, which hasn't changed a bit since last year, when you granted us another 5 hours a week, and we added an additional library assistant,
Oh, good.
which is working out great, by the way. So that amount has stayed the same. 249, employee support. I belong to the Mass Library Association, and the $200 for training and fees and travel. I do a lot of webinars whenever I can, and occasionally the Board of Library Commissioners or CW Mars offers a workshop. Most of those are free of charge, so it's just a matter of travel expenses for them. 250 is our post office box. We don't have mail delivery in the center, I'm really not sure why I really don't understand that, but 251, that just breaks down what used to be our expenses. One of the components is being certified is that we spend 19% of our total appropriated income on materials that can be borrowed. So that number is, that doesn't represent 19% because we are allowed to use our state aid and other sources to meet that number. 252 is other, and that's CW Mars membership. That amount has been reduced by a small libraries and networks grant that I have been applying for every year and have been given. 253, I just tried to summarize those components for certification. They involve the number of hours the library is open per week, including some evenings and Saturday hours, 19%. The municipal appropriation requirement, which is typically where we target for our request from all of you, because the amount that we request from the town year to year doesn't truly represent what it costs to run the library. It costs much more than that, but we've always tried to keep to as close to that municipal appropriation number as possible, because otherwise our appropriation could really increase by leaps and bounds, and nobody wants that. And I think that's all of my budget.
Great. Anybody have any questions?
Just one.
Yes.
So, is the library open 30 hours and you have 2 people there whenever it's open?
With the exception of Monday evenings, I typically leave around 4:30 to go over to Phillipston, where I work also. Janet would be there from 4:30 to 7 by herself, although we have a group that comes in every Monday night to use it, and she also works alone on Saturdays for 3 hours. Other than that, there's 2 people there all the time.
Okay, so you're open then a little more than 30 hours?
No, we're only open 30 hours a week.
Okay.
Do you wanna have her be open 35?
I would be fine with that.
It's amazing, really, from the minute we were open, the additional 5 hours, July 1st. We added another story time, which was great and was really well attended, but just the foot traffic, it was just like, it was what people wanted all along, so that's been wonderful.
What kind of story time do you have? What kind of books do you read?
Don't you see it
No,
on
because I
TV?
might want to come. I want to go check this out. Because story time, this is
Oh,
might
it's
be fun.
great. No, Steve's come out and filmed a couple of them, and
Good.
and they've been on Channel 8.
The kids have a
and-
good time and,
Oh, it's fun,
Okay.
yeah. We have a couple of lively groups, different groups on Wednesday and Thursday, and we have a lot of fun.
oh, good.
You've never been to Story
I've
Hour?
done it, yeah.
Oh my, Jackie's the best.
Well, I'm going to have to start doing that.
How did you miss that? You still have kids young enough to be able to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I went without mine.
Oh, me? But it just so happens I do, yeah.
Anyway,
Now I'm turning
I'm
red.
happy that more people
I read to my kids. I read myself. It helps me. But I will take them up to the library. I'm gonna shut up now. How's that? All right, so, any other questions for the librarian? Music, please, music.
soon to be possibly community services director.
Yeah, possibly.
I would love that.
Yep. A
I
lot
would
of
love
responsibility, though. A lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and with the exception of Sheila, I did talk to Jess before she left, but I haven't had a chance to talk to Sheila, but Diana and I have talked about collaborating on programming, Steve and I, Scott and I, so I think it would be a really good thing.
Okay. It's tough being the boss sometimes.
I think that with the partners that you would have, it would work very well. And I think before, last year, during budget season, I think that we had talked before about bringing the younger generation and the older generation together, and how it really helps with cognitive ability and you know, I mean, there's just an all the way around, and, I mean, Steve, I can't speak enough about, Steve Castle, so, just all the departments, the new veteran service officer, and I think that you would have just teamwork in general, and all the department heads always work together, just in general here, and it's amazing to watch, so I would be so thrilled, me personally, that's just my opinion. So, thank you, Jackie, for everything that you do.
Do you guys have any other questions for? Yes, Jeff?
I have one thing, so I was wondering, Jackie, if you could just elaborate a little bit on like the CMARs, because some people may not realize what keeping that little library certified means, that people have access to without having to travel. I mean, you have access to the university library, you get books from, and I just
Right.
wanna make sure people know that.
Yeah,
Because
thanks.
sometimes they think that little library, what do we need that for?
Yeah, and we are part of CW Mars, we're in the final stage of being able to circulate, but our entire collection is on that database. So, as you know, people they don't have the time typically to come into a public library and browse and look for a book, and they wanna look on their phone, find the Templeton Library and see, does this library have this book that I want? And if it does, I'm clicking on a button and asking them to hold it for me. That's what CW Mars enables us to do. As part of a library that is certified, which we are and have been for 20-something years, that allows Templeton residents to have access to any materials in any other library in the state. And that's, you know, we can't expect our little library and our budget to supply everyone with the books that they want in Templeton, but we have access to pretty much, you know, anything.
Wow.
Julie knows.
Yeah, yeah. Do that, and then we'll do Commonwealth Catalog, and then we'll really keep going.
Great, thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank
Anybody have
you.
any other questions? None? Thanks so much for coming, I appreciate it. What's next?
So that's all, it's been a pretty long evening, and thank you for your patience. Hopefully it was productive.
She left.
Tomorrow evening, we want to start to begin the warrant review. Much of that has been reviewed by town council now. If there was a warrant article too, I wasn't sure was gonna go forward, I told them to hold off on that, so we weren't spending money on it. I'll have copies of the, I think I sent out to everybody the Monty Tech, link to the Monty Tech. And I'll have the 4 or 5 pages that are of greatest import to us for y'all. And did you circulate, were you able to circulate the Narragansett?
No, I have not. We
I'll
haven't
have
had it.
copies of the PowerPoint presentation and the 2 proposed school budgets, and be able to speak to my conversation with Dr. Cassavant in preparation for attendance, so you can determine who and is going to attend and what you want to say if you need any presentation material from us for the school's preliminary budget hearing on Wednesday evening.
What time is that?
If it doesn't get canceled.
Stop
Did you really just say that? Yeah, thanks.
In a series of firsts, this community is the first time in 40-some years I've had to cancel and reschedule budget hearings. Interesting times.
I just watch the weather, I don't produce it.
I believe it's 6 Wednesday night in the Kiva room.
I think
Bob, do you, does anybody recall for certain? We'll have that for you tomorrow night.
Thank you.
And that's, unless there's something else, Mr. Chairman, that's quite a night and all that we have for you this evening.
Make motion to adjourn.
You know what? Oh, great.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are we, just hold for tight for 1 second. We have a meeting on Monday,
Yep.
following Monday. Are we,
6 PM, Kiva, Carter.
6 p.m.
thanks, Cameron.
It's a business meeting Monday, yes.
Oh, Monday's a business meeting?
Monday night's a business meeting.
Are we
and
having
then-
any, well,
I'm sorry, Mr.
a
Chairman.
regular
it's-
business meeting?
I just want to make sure I hear the question, so everybody can hear my answer.
Monday is a regular
Yes,
selectmen's
Monday
meeting.
night's a regular select board meeting at 6:30. Tuesday and Wednesday, Tuesday's the public meeting.
Right,
Wednesday's the
okay.
school
I don't
district's
have all my
final
dates right.
budget
On
hearing.
the 28th.
What time's the meeting on Tuesday?
They're all ours are all 6:30.
6:30, so 6:30 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes. No.
Wednesday might be 6, because it's school board, I'll have to check.
Okay,
School board's Wednesday, the 28th.
okay.
Anything else?
Yes,
Yes.
I would like to add to the agenda revisiting events on the common. Please, and thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's already on there.
On the common, not somewhere else.
On the
It's
common.
already on there?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep, it's already on there.
Okay, thank you. Cameron, you made a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Motion to adjourn and seconded.
They have to do,
Yes.
Yeah, they'll have to adjourn
Yes.
now.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as
they
well.
have to do their own.
AC, you guys are on your own?
All right, I'm just
We
reading.
can give them our minutes to be their minutes, but they have to maintain their own meeting minutes.
So do we need to make a motion that we adjourn also?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second it.
Anybody wanna stay?
Yeah, you can. You stay right till Wednesday, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Hey, drop me off a coffee in the morning, would you?